Part 1, The Unseen Web. The phone rang, its shrill sound cutting through the stillness of the kitchen. I glanced at the screen, already knowing who it was. My soon-to-be father-in-law, Mr. Miller. I didn't want to answer it, but I had no choice. The call was inevitable. "Emily, it's Mr. Miller," came the voice on the other end. It was sharp, like the edge of a blade. "We need to talk about the wedding. There are still some unresolved issues." I rolled my eyes, trying to keep my frustration from showing. Wedding issues. Wasn't everything supposed to be perfect by now? The invitations were out, the dress was ready, the venue confirmed. But somehow, nothing ever felt settled when it came to the Millers. I was in the kitchen, watching Ethan carefully wash strawberries, his broad shoulders flexing with each move. He was always so calm, always so perfect, at least on the outside. I envied that about him. I envied the way he could appear flawless while I was stuck dealing with messes one else saw. "No need to discuss it, Mr. Miller," I said, cutting him off before he could go into his usual lecture. "Everything on my end for the wedding is nearly done." I could hear the momentary silence on the other side of the line. Mr. Miller was undoubtedly weighing my words, trying to figure out if I was backing down or standing my ground. He didn't like when people didn't yield to him. "All right then," he finally said, his voice lowering, a hint of resignation creeping in. "Send me a copy of the wedding plan." Jason made a mistake, but as the future daughter-in-law of the Miller family, you need to be the bigger person. His words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. The bigger person? He was talking about forgiveness, about letting things slide, about me putting up with whatever mess Jason Miller had made. But I was tired of being the bigger person. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. Ethan stepped into the room then, holding a plate of freshly washed strawberries. He set it on the table, a playful smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He had clearly overheard the call. "Who are you talking to, Emily?" he asked softly, leaning over to me with a strawberry in hand. It wasn't the first time Ethan had appeared at exactly the right moment, but this time, it felt different. He wasn't just interrupting my thoughts, he was watching me closely, waiting for an answer. For a moment, I wished I could just tell him everything. All the doubts, all the secrets that were building up inside me. But I didn't. Instead, I just shot him a sideways glance and ignored the sting in my chest. "Jason," I said simply, hoping he wouldn't ask any more questions. But Ethan didn't move, didn't look away. Instead, he popped the strawberry into my mouth, and for a split second, all the tension seemed to melt away. I chewed slowly, savoring the sweetness, but inside, my thoughts were a storm of confusion. What was I doing? Was I really going through with this wedding? Was I making a mistake? Was Ethan the one I was meant to marry? The line went quiet again as Mr. Miller's voice came through, colder this time. "Jason was momentarily tempted, Emily. And maybe you were briefly distracted by someone new too. That's normal, but in the end, we're still one family. You need to be the bigger person." I wanted to scream. To tell him how tired I was of being the forgiving one. How it wasn't my responsibility to clean up their messes. But instead, I chewed on the strawberry, trying to keep the emotions from showing. Ethan placed another strawberry between my lips, his fingers brushing against my skin. His gaze was soft, tender, like he could see right through me. "What did he want, Emily?" he asked, his voice low and soothing, as if trying to comfort me without fully understanding the weight of the situation. I didn't answer immediately. My mind was too full, too clouded. Everything felt like a tangled web, and I was stuck in the middle of it. "He's just trying to fix things," I muttered, my voice almost too quiet to hear. Ethan didn't push me for more. Instead, he sat next to me, his hand brushing mine lightly. He didn't need to say anything else. The quiet understanding between us was enough. But as much as I wanted to ignore it, I knew deep down that nothing was ever simple with the Millers. I couldn't escape the past. Not now, not ever. The wedding was only a few days away. The invitations had been sent, red envelopes with gold foil, the names Emily Lynn and Ethan Crane etched in elegant calligraphy. Everyone was talking about it, everyone was watching. The daughter of the Lynn family marrying into the powerful Crane family. But I wasn't sure if anyone knew the whole story. Or if they'd ever understand it. That night, when the invitations were delivered, Ethan had clung to on. Like a lifeline, refusing to let go. He was acting like an excited child, and I couldn't help but wonder what was going on in his head. How could he fall in love with me so easily? What was it about me that had captured his attention? But before I could get lost in my thoughts, there was a knock at the door. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. Ethan was half asleep when he stumbled out of the guest room, still groggy, still clinging to the invitation. "I'll get it," I said, heading toward the door. To my surprise, when I opened it, there stood Jason Miller. He was drenched from the rain, his face pale, his expression unreadable. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse, like he hadn't slept in days. "You're really going to marry him?" His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Jason. The man I had once loved. The man who had betrayed me. The man who had shattered my heart into pieces. He was standing here, asking me the one question that I could never answer. Was I really going to marry Ethan? Was I really ready to let go of everything I had once wanted? The rain was pouring down in sheets now, and Jason stood there, soaked to the bone, looking like a man who had lost everything. His eyes were tired, his shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered everything he had done. The lies, the cheating, the broken promises. The way he had hurt me over and over again. I stepped back from the door, trying to block him out. "Leave, Jason," I said firmly. "Go away." But he didn't leave. Instead, he planted himself in front of me, his eyes searching mine. "Emily, please. I know I messed up. I can't let you marry him. Not like this." Something inside me snapped. I didn't cave in. If it was the exhaustion or the anger or the sheer frustration of it all, but I couldn't stand there and let him do this to me again. I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. "Get out," I spat, slamming the door in his face. I turned back to see Ethan standing there, his eyes wide with confusion. "What was that about?" he asked softly, his voice unsure. I shook my head, my chest tight with emotion. "It's nothing. Just nothing." But inside, everything felt like it was falling apart. The wedding was still days away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing was going to go as planned. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much I was about to lose. And how much I might have already lost. Part 2, Tangled Loyalties. The rain hadn't let up by the time Jason left. I stood by the door, my heart pounding, the sound of the storm pressing in from the outside like a relentless drumbeat. Ethan was still in the living room, waiting for me to explain, to tell him what had just happened, but I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to speak. Jason's words had hit me like a flood. Are you really going to marry him? I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't know if I even wanted to. The question kept echoing in my mind over and over again, like a broken record. And what made it worse was that, deep down, I wasn't sure what the right answer was. I had been avoiding this moment for months, the moment when I would have to make a choice between the man I had once loved and the man I was supposed to marry. The man who had put a ring on my finger, promised me a future, and yet, somewhere along the way, something had gone wrong. I just didn't know what. When I walked back into the live-in room, Ethan was sitting on the couch, his brow furrowed in concern, a glass of wine untouched beside him. His face was filled with the quiet hope that I would explain everything, that I would make the storm inside me settle, at least for him. But I couldn't. I couldn't lie to him, not when I was so uncertain myself. Who was that? He asked again, this time with a gentleness that only made me feel worse. I sat beside him, the weight of the moment pressing down on me like a lead blanket. It was Jason, I said softly, my voice catching in my throat. He wants me back. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he placed his hand on mine, his thumb rubbing small circles against my skin. I didn't pull away, though the gesture felt strange now, like we were living in some distorted version of the reality we had once shared. Emily, you don't have to explain anything to me, Ethan said quietly, his eyes never leaving mine. I know this isn't easy for you. But if you want to talk about it, I'm here. I wanted to scream at him, tell him that he wasn't the problem, that Jason and my family were the ones I was trying to avoid. But instead, I simply nodded. The words wouldn't come. What could I say? How could I explain to him that I was still haunted by my past, by the mistakes I had made, by the love that had crumbled? Ethan's gaze softened, and for a moment, I could see the man I had fallen for, the man who didn't judge me, who wasn't trying to fix me, but just wanted to be there for me. But then Jason's voice, his desperate words, came crashing back into my mind. You don't have to go through with this, Emily. You deserve better. You deserve me. And that was what really scared me. Jason had always known how to twist my emotions, how to make me feel guilty, how to make me question everything I thought I knew. His charm was intoxicating, and even now, after everything that had happened, I couldn't completely shake him from my mind. I didn't know what to do with that. Ethan, I whispered, my voice barely audible, what if I'm not sure? What if I'm not ready to marry you yet? His expression didn't change, but there was something in his eyes, something deeper than concern. It was fear, yes, but it was also understanding, as if he knew exactly where this conversation was going. Emily, he began. His voice low, you've been through a lot. I understand that. But you need to know, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be honest with me. If you're unsure, if you need time, we can figure it out together. I looked down at our hands, feeling the weight of his words. He wasn't angry, wasn't demanding anything from me. He was just there. Waiting. I don't know what I want anymore, I admitted. Sometimes it feels like everything is slipping away, and I'm not sure who I'm supposed to be anymore. Ethan took a deep breath, and when he spoke again, his words were more deliberate, more solid. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You just have to trust me. Trust us. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel the peace that he was offering, to just let go of the past and move forward with him. But there was a part of me, an unforgiving part, that couldn't let go of the unanswered questions, of the unfinished business with Jason. The night dragged on, and I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Ethan had already fallen asleep beside me, his steady breathing a reminder of everything I stood to lose. But my mind wouldn't stop. Every thought led me back to Jason. To the love I had once thought was unbreakable, to the betrayal, and to the devastation I had never fully processed. The clock ticked, the rain pounded on. The windows, and the words Jason had spoken kept playing in my mind. You deserve better. What if he was right? What if Ethan wasn't the right choice? What if I was just running from something, from the guilt, the fear, the mess that was my past? It wasn't until the next morning that I finally found the courage to confront the truth. Ethan had gone out for a jog, leaving me alone in the apartment. The morning light streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. The house was silent, peaceful even, but all I could think about was what I had to do. I grabbed my phone from the table and stared at the screen. Jason's number was still saved in my contacts. My finger hovered over the call button, but I hesitated. Could I really do this? Could I really confront him again after everything that had happened? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and pressed dial. It only took one ring before he picked up. Emily, Jason's voice was rough, as if he had been awake for hours. Are you okay? I need to talk to you, I said, my voice steady even though my hands were trembling. Meet me at the old cafe. We need to finish this. There was a brief pause on the other end, followed by a soft sigh. I'll be there. As I hung up the phone, a wave of dread washed over me. This was it. The moment I had been dreading, the moment when I had to face the man who had torn my world apart and tell him, finally, whether I was going to walk away for good. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. It was the same one Jason and I had visited so many times before, back when everything felt simple, when the world had been smaller, and the problems seemed far away. I sat by the window, staring out at the rain, the steam from my coffee curling up into the cold air. Jason arrived a few minutes later, looking as disheveled as ever. His eyes were shadowed, his expression unreadable, and for a moment, I wasn't sure how to start. I didn't think you'd actually come, I said softly, trying to break the ice. He sat down across from me, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. I told you, Emily. I'll always come for you. My heart squeezed. I didn't want to feel this way. I didn't want to remember how much I had once loved him. I didn't want to be tangled in this mess again. But it was too late. The past was already here. Part 3, The Confession. The cafe was quieter now, the storm outside continuing to lash against the windows with relentless force. I couldn't ignore the pounding of the rain, or the rush of nerves flooding my system as I waited for Jason to speak. We sat across from each other in the dimly lit corner, the only sounds in the room being the soft clink of cutlery and the occasional murmur of distant conversation. Jason's eyes were heavy with something, regret, maybe, or longing. I couldn't tell. His features had softened with age and experience, but I could still see the boy I had fallen for all those years ago, the one who had once made me feel like I was the only person in the world. But now? Now, it was different. Emily, Jason began, his voice low, but the words came out like he had rehearsed them 1,000 times. I don't know how to start this, how to make you understand just how sorry I am. I folded my hands on the table, my fingers trembling despite myself. You don't have to apologize, Jason. I need to know the truth. The whole truth. He stared at me for a long moment, as if he were weighing his words carefully. He sighed, and then, finally, he spoke again. It wasn't supposed to happen the way it did, he said, his eyes flickering with something darker now, something I couldn't quite read. When I cheated on you, I thought I could fix it. I thought I could fix everything. But I couldn't. The words landed like a punch to my gut. I hadn't expected this, hadn't expected him to admit it so plainly. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I'd spent so many years hating him for what he'd done, blaming him for the collapse of everything we had built. I had never allowed myself to consider the possibility that he might feel remorse, that he might have regrets. I knew it, you know, I said, my voice shaking now. I knew something was off. But I couldn't bring myself to confront you. I thought it would hurt too much. Jason's gaze dropped to his hands, his fingers twisting the edge of the napkin in front of him. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know that. But I want you to know that I never meant to hurt you, Emily. I loved you, and I still. Stop, I interrupted, my voice rising without meaning to. Don't do this. Don't tell me you still love me. I don't want to hear it. Jason flinched, as if my words had physically struck him. But I wasn't going to let him do this to me again. I wasn't going to let him play with my heart like he had before. You think you can just walk back into my life after everything that happened? I continued, the anger inside me growing. You think that just because you say you're sorry, everything will be okay? You destroyed everything, Jason. You destroyed us. Ow, he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. And I hate myself for it. I looked at him then, really looked at him. I had spent so long building walls, convincing myself that I hated him, that he didn't deserve anything from me. But as I watched him sitting there, broken and remorseful, I couldn't help but feel a strange, overwhelming sense of pity. Maybe he wasn't the man I had once believed in. Maybe he wasn't the man I wanted to marry. But there was still a part of me, a part that hadn't healed completely, that still wanted to believe in him. I don't know why I'm here, I said, shaking my head, trying to force the emotion down. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. With you. Jason's eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. I'm asking you to choose, Emily, he said, his voice thick with desperation. I'm asking you to choose me. Jason, I can't, I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I can't choose you. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The weight of my words hung heavy between us, a chasm that neither of us could bridge. Jason's face fell, and I saw something in his eyes, regret, certainly, but something else too. Something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't relief. It wasn't hope. It was resignation. I understand, he said quietly, standing up from the table. I know I don't deserve anything. From you. But I had to try. I had to know if there was a chance, Emily. For us. I watched him walk away, his figure receding through the cafe's glass doors. And even though part of me wanted to run after him, to beg him to stay, I didn't. I couldn't. I had made my choice, and it wasn't him. The seconds felt like hours after Jason left. The weight in my chest hadn't lifted, but something inside me had shifted. There was no sense of closure, no neat and tidy resolution to this chapter of my life. But I knew, with every fiber of my being, that this was the right decision. But that didn't mean it was easy. I paid for my coffee and stood up, walking slowly to the door. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray, heavy with the promise of more to come. I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders, the cold air biting at my skin as I made my way back down the street toward the apartment. As I walked, I couldn't help but think about Ethan. About how much he had been there for me, how much he still believed in me, despite everything. He had never pushed me, never demanded anything. He had always given me space, trusted me to make my own decisions, and today, I knew I needed to talk to him. The question was no longer whether I could forgive Jason. It was whether I could forgive myself. When I opened the door to the apartment, Ethan was sitting on the couch, looking over some papers. His eyes met mine as I entered, and he immediately stood, concern etching his face. "Emily," he said softly, his voice laced with worry. "Are you okay?" I nodded, though the truth was far more complicated. I wanted to fall into his arms and tell him everything, but I wasn't ready. Not yet. I spoke to Jason, I said quietly, my throat tight. And I made my decision. Ethan waited for me to conton. His face unreadable. "I'm not going back," I said, the words coming out more firmly than I had expected. "I'm staying with you." He didn't say anything at first, just walked over to me and pulled me into a tight embrace. His warmth enveloped me, and for a moment, I closed my eyes, letting the comfort of his presence wash over me. "I don't need you to choose me, Emily," he said, his voice muffled against my hair. "I just need you to be happy. Whatever that means." And in that moment, I realized that maybe, just maybe, I was already beginning to find that happiness. Part 4, Unraveling the Past. The days that followed were a blur, a haze of cold mornings and sleepless nights. It wasn't just the weather that was stormy, it was my mind, constantly caught between the past I was trying to forget and the future I was trying to build. I'd chosen Ethan, but in doing so, I had also chosen to confront the ghosts of my past. I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. Jason's face haunted me, a shadow lurking in the corners of my thoughts. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, the boy I had once loved, the man who had broken me. And though I had told myself that I was done with him, done with the past, I still couldn't shake the feeling that something had been left unfinished. It had been a week since our meeting at the cafe, and while Jason had disappeared from my life, the impact of his words lingered. He had told me that he wanted me back, but more than that, he had told me that he still loved me. I had rejected him then. I had walked away from the person I had once trusted with everything. But it wasn't as simple as that. His words kept echoing in my mind. Was I really over him? Was I truly ready to start fresh with Ethan? I didn't know. And that uncertainty was eating at me. The apartment was quiet when I arrived home one evening after work. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the wall clock were the only sounds. I set my bag down on the counter and kicked off my shoes, leaden. The exhaustion of the day settled into my bones. Ethan wasn't home yet, and for the first time in days, I found myself alone with my thoughts. It was a strange feeling, being alone again. I had gotten so used to Jason's presence in my life, to the way he had been my constant, my rock. But that rock had crumbled, leaving me to rebuild from the rubble. And now, as I stood in the middle of the apartment, the silence felt suffocating. I grabbed a cup from the shelf and filled it with water, trying to push the unease away. I stared at my reflection in the window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, but I couldn't escape the turmoil inside me. The battle between my past and present was still raging, and I wasn't sure which side was winning. I had told Ethan I was staying with him, that I was choosing him. But what did that even mean? Was I truly ready to let go of everything I had been with Jason? Was I ready to fully embrace the love that Ethan had been offering me all this time? The questions swirled in my mind like a storm, and the longer I stood there, the more I felt like I was sinking. Suddenly, the sound of the door opening broke through my thoughts. Ethan's voice called out from the hallway. "Hey, you home?" I turned toward the sound, my heart giving a strange, involuntary lurch. "Yeah, I'm here," I called back. He appeared in the doorway a few moments later, his expression softening when he saw me standing there, lost in thought. He took a few steps toward me and then stopped, as if unsure of what to say. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle, concerned. I nodded, though it wasn't entirely true. I wasn't okay. "Not really." I don't know," I murmured, avoiding his gaze. "I've been thinking a lot." Ethan walked over to me, standing just a few inches away. "About what?" I hesitated. The words I had been holding inside for so long finally came tumbling out. "About Jason," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't stop thinking about him. About everything we were." Ethan's face tightened, but he didn't interrupt. He just stood there, waiting for me to continue. "I thought I was done with him. I thought I was ready to move on," I said, my words coming faster now, the floodgates opening. "But I'm not. I don't know if I ever will be." There was a long silence between us, and I could see the conflict in Ethan's eyes. But he didn't pull away. He didn't get angry. Instead, he took my hands in his grip firm but gentle. "I don't want to share you with him, Emily," Ethan said softly. "But I know that you need to find peace with it. I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Tears threatened to spill over, but I fought them back. Ethan didn't deserve to carry the weight of my past. He had given me everything, love, support, patience, but I hadn't fully given him my heart. Not yet. "I don't want to hurt you, Ethan," I said, my voice cracking. "I just don't know how to let go." Ethan cupped my face in his hands, his thumb brushing away a stray tear before it could fall. His eyes softened, and he leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. "You don't have to do it all at once," he murmured. "You just have to take it one step at a time. And I'll be right here, walking with you." His words hit me harder than I expected. It was so simple, so kind, and yet, it was everything I had been longing for. Ethan wasn't asking me to forget about Jason. He wasn't demanding that I stop loving him, stop caring. He was asking me to heal. To move forward. At my own pace. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. "I'll try," I whispered, my heart aching with the effort. "I'll try, Ethan." The next few days were a mix of quiet moments and introspective thoughts. I didn't have any clear swerves, but I was starting to realize that maybe the journey of moving on wasn't about fully letting go of the past. It was about learning how to live with it, how to accept that the past was a part of me, but it didn't have to define me. And Ethan was part of my future. The question wasn't whether I could love him. It was whether I could love myself enough to let go of the guilt, the shame, and the fear that had held me back for so long. But even as I started to make peace with my decision, the shadows of my past still loomed. Jason hadn't been the only one who had hurt me. There were other pieces of my life I had pushed aside, buried deep, hoping they would disappear. But they hadn't. They were waiting for me to face them. Part 5. The Weight of Unspoken Truths. It had been 2 weeks since that quiet conversation with Ethan in the living room. 2 weeks since he had told me that I didn't need to do it all at on. That I could take my time to heal. I appreciated that, more than I could put into words. But while he gave me the space I needed, I was starting to realize that my own heart was still a battlefield. Jason's presence, though distant, lingered in the corners of my mind, casting a shadow I couldn't ignore. I had made the choice to marry Ethan. I had chosen to move forward, but how could I do that when I still hadn't fully confronted the things that had held me back for so long? I wasn't sure if I was fooling myself into thinking I could just sweep it all under the rug, but the longer I stayed in this limbo, the more I realized that nothing would truly change until I faced the truth. The truth about Jason, about my feelings, and about the guilt I still carried with me. And then, it happened. I had just stepped out of the office on a Monday afternoon, the streets bustling with people going about their day, when I saw a familiar figure. I froze in place, my heart lurching. Jason. His dark hair was messy, his suit wrinkled, his eyes tired. He was standing at the entrance of the cafe across the street, his gaze scanning the crowd like he was searching for something, or someone. The world around me seemed to slow as my heart pounded in my chest. Why was he here? What did he want? I stood frozen for a moment, my feet unwilling to move. I could feel the weight of his presence, even from across the street. My mind flashed to all the times we had shared, when he had been my everything. But that man no longer existed, not in the way he once had. The person who had stood by my side, who had promised me the world, had shattered all of that with his lies. But even knowing that, even knowing what I had to do, my legs were slow to carry me away. For a moment, I was trapped between the person I had been and the person I was now. Emily. His voice cut through the distance between us, and I flinched. It wasn't a voice I had heard in months, but it was still so familiar, so ingrained in my memory that it felt like a punch to the gut. I turned slowly, unwilling to fully face him yet unable to walk away. His eyes were intense, searching, as if trying to read me in the same way he used to. His lips parted as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out for a long moment. Can we talk? He asked finally. The quiet plea in his voice caught me off guard, but it didn't change the fact that I had already made my decision. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Why now, Jason? I asked, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. Why after all this time? He looked down, his expression softening. I don't know. Maybe because I can't stand how things ended. Maybe because I still regret everything. I didn't respond at first. Part of me wanted to shout at him, to demand answers for all the pain he had caused me. But another part of me, the part that had loved him for so long, wanted to reach out and hold on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, he had changed. But that part of me was dying, piece by piece. I've moved on, Jason, I said, finally finding my voice. I'm not the person I was when I was with you. And I'm not going back. Not to you. Not to that life. Emily, he said, taking a step toward me, his voice strained. Please. I know I messed up. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. To fix this. I shook my head, the words coming faster now, more forcefully. You can't fix this, Jason. Not anymore. You had your chance. You ruined it. And I'm not waiting around for you to get it right. There was a beat of silence between us, the air thick with tension. I felt his eyes on me, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. Not now. I had spent years tied to the idea of him, of what he could be, of what he promised to be. But the truth was, I had never known who Jason really was. I had built him up in my mind, holding on to the scraps of what we had, ignoring the signs of his deceit until it was too late. "You don't have to do this, Jason said, his voice breaking. "You don't have to marry him. You can come back to me. We can fix this. I swear, I'll make it right." I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly. Ethan had given me the love I had always deserved, the respect that Jason had never shown. Ethan had never once made me question my worth, never made me feel like I was fighting for his attention. "I'm done," I said, finally looking him in the eyes. "I'm done with you, Jason. And I'm done with this life. I've moved on. It's over." For a moment, Jason just stood there, his face a mix of disbelief and hurt. But then, as if resigning himself to it, he nodded. "I see," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily." I watched as he turned away and disappeared into the crowd. And as he walked away, I felt the final weight of that chapter of my life fall away. I was free. The days after that encounter were a blur, but a different kind of blur. For the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. The burden of Jason's presence, the weight of his expectations, had been lifted from my shoulders. I could finally breathe again. But even as I stood in the aftershock of that moment, I knew that my journey wasn't over. Jason wasn't the only piece of my past I needed to face. There was still the matter of my own guilt, the guilt of letting Samion else dictate my life for so long. And the next obstacle loomed ahead, the Miller family. They had tried to control me once, but now, I had control over my own life. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into their web of manipulation. I thought of Ethan, and how he had stood by me through it all. The man who loved me despite everything, despite the baggage I had carried into our relationship. He deserved more than my fragmented heart. He deserved my whole, undivided love. That's exactly what I intended to give him. Part 6. The Promise of Tomorrow. The days leading up to the wedding felt like a blur, an overwhelming rush of final preparations, family obligations, and an anxious energy that I couldn't shake. Yet, in all the chaos, one thing remained clear: I was finally ready to step into this new chapter of my life. The chapter where I no longer let the ghosts of my past control my decisions, my emotions, or my future. The encounter with Jason had gone something deep inside me. It wasn't about getting revenge or proving him wrong, it was about proving something to myself. I wasn't the girl who had blindly loved him anymore. I wasn't the girl who would shrink back into herself whenever the shadows of the past resurfaced. I was a woman who had learned to stand tall, to take control, and to choose happiness, no matter the cost. Ethan and I had our fair share of quiet, tender moments during this time. He knew I was still processing everything, still moving through the emotions of letting go, but he never pushed. He was patient. He was understanding. And in a world where everyone always seemed to want something from me, Ethan was the one person who had never expected me to be anything but myself. It was a love like no other, a love that gave me room to breathe, to grow, to heal. And that love was exactly what I needed as I stood on the brink of one of the biggest days of my life. The morning of the wedding, I woke up to the soft hum of the city outside the window. It was a typical spring day, bright, crisp, and fresh, but there was something about the air that felt different, as if the world itself was holding its breath, waiting for something monumental to unfold. I stretched, trying to shake off the lingering exhaustion of the last few weeks. I had been running on fumes, between managing the all details for the wedding and handling the unexpected drama that came with it, but today, I couldn't afford to be tired. I stood up, pulling on the soft white robe the bridal team had given me, and walked to the window. The view of the city felt like an entirely different place. There was peace now, quiet, and I realized it wasn't the world that had changed, it was me. I had learned how to stand on my own, how to trust my instincts, how to say goodbye to the people and the things that no longer served me. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, my voice steady. The door creaked open, and one of the wedding planners stepped inside, her eyes wide with excitement. "It's almost time, Miss Lynn. Everyone's getting ready. The photographer will be here soon." I nodded, though a small wave of nervousness washed over me. I glanced at my reflection in the mirror, taking in the woman staring back at me. She wasn't perfect, far from it. But she was strong, resilient, and determined to move forward. I had come a long way from the girl who once thought she had to stay silent, stay small, just to keep the peace. The next few hours flew by in a whirlwind of activity. My hair, my makeup, the dress, it all felt like a blur, like I was watching it from a distance. But there was one thing that grounded me through all of it, Ethan. I kept thinking of him, imagining him standing at the altar, waiting for me. The thought made my chest tighten with both excitement and nerves. It wasn't until I was fully dressed in my wedding gown, the intricate lace and silk enveloping me, that I felt the weight of everything come crashing down. I was about to marry the man who had been nothing but good to me, who had loved me when I couldn't even love myself, who had stuck by my side when the world felt like it was crumbling. And suddenly, the doubts that had plagued me for so long started to fade. I wasn't settling for anything. I wasn't trying to fix someone else. I was choosing Ethan because he was the right person for me, because he made me feel whole, because he allowed me to be the person I was meant to be, not the one others expected me to be. As I walked down the aisle, my uncle by my side, I could feel the weight of my parents' absence. The hollow space where they should have been was palpable, but instead of letting it break me, I felt their presence in my heart, a reminder of who I was and where I came from. This was my moment, my future, and I would carry their love with me forever. The moment I saw Ethan, standing there at the altar, waiting for me, I felt everything click into place. He looked at me with so much love, so much promise in his eyes, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that this was where I was meant to be. I reached his side, and my uncle gently handed me over to him, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. I was nervous, yes, but the overwhelming feeling that washed over me wasn't fear, it was certainty. Ethan took my hand, his touch warm, comforting. As we stood there, together, I realized that this was more than just a wedding. This was the culmination of everything I had been through, the pain, the heartbreak, the betrayal, and the reward of choosing to heal, to love again, and to trust in the possibility of a better future. The officiant spoke, his words like a steady rhythm in the background. "Ethan Crane, do you take Emily Lynn to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Ethan said without hesitation, his voice strong and filled with so much love it made my heart skip a beat. And then, the moment I had been waiting for, the moment that would change everything. "Emily Lynn, do you take Ethan Crane to be your lawfully wedded husband?" I looked into Ethan's eyes, the love between us undeniable, unshakable. "I do," I said softly, but with all the conviction in the world. The officiant smiled, and with a single, powerful word, we were bound together for life. "You may now kiss the bride." Ethan's lips met mine, gently but firm, as if he were sealing our future with that kiss. And in that moment, everything felt right. Every painful memory, every tear, every sacrifice, it had all led me to this moment. The past no longer had a hold on me. It was a part of me, yes, but it didn't define me anymore. When we pulled away, our eyes locked, and there was an understanding between us, unspoken but powerful. I wasn't just marrying him for today, for the wedding, for the fairy tale. I was marrying him for the future we would build together. The reception was a whirlwind of celebration, laughter, dancing, and the clinking of glasses filled with champagne. The Miller family, though clearly still reeling from the scandal, was present, but the atmosphere had changed. Jason wasn't there, and honestly, I didn't care to see him again. As Ethan and I danced together, surrounded by friends and family, I realized that this was where I belonged. Not in the past, not in the mistakes of others, but right here in this moment, with Ethan. I had started this journey broken, unsure, and lost. But I had found my way, not through the promises of others, but through my own strength and determination to create the life I deserved. And as I looked around at the people who loved me, who accepted me for who I truly was, I knew that I had finally found home. The rest of my life awaited, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited for what tomorrow would bring. Ethan's hand in mine was the final reassurance I needed. We had made it. Together. And nothing, not even the ghosts of the past, could take that away.